Well, good evening. Welcome to Grid Talk. My name is Tom Downey, and today we are going to discuss the 2024 Mexico Grand Prix. Joining me, we have the people's spirit animal, Philip Matthew.
Hello.
Hello, you weren't expecting that one, were you? And we also have good friend of mine, Jawed Yakub.
Hey guys, good morning.
Hello, sir. Good morning indeed. Just before we get into this episode, we must thank our sponsor, Bet Online. So, basketball fans, it's that time of year again. The NBA is back. From the opening tip-off to buzzer beaters, BetOnline has you covered with the best odds, biggest promotions, and live in-game betting on all your favorite teams. This season, every game matters. BetOnline has every stat, matchup breakdown, and live odds to bet on during games. It's also not just the NBA. BetOnline has odds on everything from football, MLB playoffs, NHL to political props. Head to the website today and get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. BetOnline, the game starts here. Be sure to follow us on social media at GridTalk UK. And also, if you're feeling extra generous, please do consider supporting us on Patreon for exclusive access and behind-the-scenes content. So, chaps, now that the admin is out of the way, as always, Phil, we'll come to you first, sir. So, there's only one place to start, and obviously, we're getting to the incidents of the race in a bit. But there's only one place to start. Carlos Sainz, pole position, lost out on lap one, safety car, took the lead back in with a pretty big lunge into turn one, and then sailed off into the sunset for his second win of the year and likely his last win for Ferrari. How do you rate the Spaniard's performance today?
Yeah, the smooth operator definitely did work today and this whole weekend. I mean, it put together a great qualifying run yesterday to get the pole, and then even after a not ideal start for him, was able to recover, get back after the safety car, pass Max Verstappen, and take off. and it was strong. One of his, I mean, fourth win of his career, second this year. Um, I mean, he kind of had the feelings and the way he was talking about it, he felt like it's probably going to be the last one, but hopefully it isn't. We'll see. There's 4 races to go, so I mean, there's different options. I mean, Ferrari, of course, has shown a lot more pace here in the last couple of weekends, so it makes me think that not just Brazil, but that final 3 race stretch could also be in play for those guys. And then when you consider the Constructors' Championship as well, being in play for Ferrari. But Carlos Sainz did basically everything right, got himself in a position to win, um, was able to overtake the guy who's the champion elect and drive on his way. And he didn't have to see any of the drama that went on behind him. So credit to Carlos, credit to Ferrari, to put together what ended up being a 1-3, but a 1-3 with the fastest lap for Charles Leclerc there in the end. Another great weekend for the Scuderia.
Absolutely. It was looking so much like it was going to be a 1-2, and then ultimately Leclerc's tyres just ran out as Lando was chasing him down. He did have a great save, to be fair. I really thought that Ferrari was going into barriers, and he held that supremely well. But Joward, we have to talk about it. Max and Lando, they came together more than once today during this race, and Max got two 10-second penalties, one for leaving the track and gaining an advantage, and the other one for forcing another driver off the track. That meant he had a 20-plus second pit stop. He dropped out of the points. Then ultimately he finished P6, I believe, behind the two Mercs, but some way off the back of the Mercs. I think he was 10, 11 seconds off the back of them, and then about 4 or 5 seconds ahead of K-Mac in seventh. How do you sort of view the whole sort of incident that unfolded today between Max and Lando?
Yeah, look, really intense moment again, and we've seen multiple flashpoints between these two drivers throughout the season. And for me, I think this sort of showed shades of Austria earlier in the year when, we saw them both kind of drop out of podium contention at the end of the race there. So, for me, the penalties deserve it. I think I said in the live chat straight away that, if they don't hand the position back in immediately, it should be a 10-second penalty, because what's a 5-second penalty these days, particularly in a Red Bull? And you saw anyway, even with 20 seconds, he was able to recover and finish inside the top 10. And really, there was not a significant gain in terms of points in the championship, for those who still believe that there is a championship fight in the drivers. But I think it was, it needed to be applied. Last week, I saw nothing wrong with how the penalties were applied and how Max drove within the rules, I must say. Not saying that morally it was correct, because, we're all about moral victories, or certain people are. But yeah, this time there was clear breach, the fact that it happened twice as well. I mean, let's be honest, that first part of the track, going through after the second straight, the little bendy bits, they are quite tight. There isn't a whole lot of room. And we did see Lawson a couple of times later in the race come a cropper there with Sergio Perez, Franco Colapinto. So, Lando could have left some more room, but, they're fighting wheel to wheel. In the end, Max is the one who went a bit too far this time. And, again, proving when the pressure is on that he does get a little hot under the collar. And, with all the stuff that he's going through, the car not in the place that he wants it to be. I mean, he's been winless since, how far ago are we thinking now of? Canadian Grand Prix, Spanish Grand Prix. I think he's not had a win this year. And, while it may not look as if the championship is as close as it it's being made out to be. They want to do what can do to protect that lead. And I think, at times we see a bit of that Michael Schumacher-esque, by any means necessary sort of driving. And that's something that I think, while it gets lauded in some corners and then scathed at by others, we have to ensure that it's, everyone is looked at consistently, and that's a big thing of mine. Looking at how the season has progressed so far. Um, trying to look at it not with any sort of bias either. It's been real difficult with all the commentary that's being put towards us regarding this. So if we're just going to isolate the incident and talk about what happened today, the penalty was, just. Wasn't expecting two lots of 10-second penalties, but the fact that a 10-second penalty was applied meant that the stewards are doing their job. So whoever last week was like, oh, they're biased against Lando because they didn't penalise Max for going off the track too. Well, this week it's happened. They're going to be reviewing the rules of engagement apparently ahead of the Qatar Grand Prix with all the drivers together. So, it opens up a bigger can of worms. And sorry to get carried away here with this, because it's really been really difficult sitting here and watching all the commentary, watching all the opinion. And it all kind of goes back to Abu Dhabi 21 and people who we don't want to mention their names. And all the things that the FIA promised since then that will change. Has it really, though? Apart from removing a particular individual as the race director, has anything changed? I don't think so. So we should be applying more scrutiny and more pressure on the people making these decisions. The fact that they have the extra, what do you call it? Extra tools at their disposal now with the bunker off-site as well. I'm just surprised that, we're still getting inconsistent decisions and people perceiving things as being, not one way or the other. So yeah, I don't know. I'm working myself into a tizzy with this one. You can tell that it really is frustrating as a spectator to see that, at times where both drivers have been just pure and hard racing, that, we have to throw the rule book at them. And then at times where things are blatantly out of order and against, any sort of rules of engagement, it kind of falls by the wayside and whatnot. So yeah, I think in this situation, the penalty was just. Not that it, did a whole lot, like as in Verstappen still had the pace and the prowess, I guess, to fight back through and finish where he did inside the points. Lando strong on the hard tire towards the end of the race, and if he had a few more laps, I'm sure he would have caught Sainz as well. But to come back and finish second, I think good for him, good for McLaren. Now they've got to worry about Ferrari. So when you complain about times where his teammates should have let him pass for extra points and this and that, I think, you can go back and say, well, it was the Constructors' Championship all along that you guys should have been focusing on. So it doesn't matter who finishes where as long as you're getting the points, because Ferrari, as much as we've not talked about them in the last couple of races with the Lando and Max championship faux battle going on, Ferrari have quietly worked themselves into contention here and could sweep the rug out of McLaren, which as a McLaren fan, I'm sad to say, but when you're focusing on the wrong thing, this sort of stuff happens.
Very, very passionate words there indeed, Jared. Thank you. And yes, you made some very good point about inconsistencies, and yeah, things haven't really changed, have they? I think that's probably a very good way to put it. But Phil, speaking of things that don't change, Mercedes, once again, Hamilton and Russell, brilliant scraps throughout this race. We didn't see all of it on TV because there were scraps sort of up and down the field today. Very, very entertaining race, I've got to be honest, certainly from my perspective. Russell and Hamilton were going at it absolutely hammer and tong at the end of the race. Bit of a British phrase there. Do you think that Merck would have perhaps benefited from some team orders, or do you think that, especially bearing in mind that Hamilton is off to Ferrari next year, he's only got a couple of races left? Do you think Mercedes sort of just thought, well, just you two have fun, keep it clean, don't do a Red Bull, don't do a Spain 2016, and bring it home, it's sort of in formation? What's your sort of view or your sort of take on how the Mercs were today?
Yeah, I think the latter option that you just said, Tom, was probably what the overarching thought would be. I mean, they know that Lewis is going to be going in 4 races. You have Georgie Boy. They want him to stand out. He got a good start, but Lewis got a better start. Even with all the argy-bargy that went on, George passed him early in the race, but then as they had the pit stop, after the pit stop, which is per usual, Lewis usually faster, and it took him a while, but in the end, he still got past him. It was clean. The certain guys could learn from that, but in the end, it's whatever. They were probably the fourth team right now in terms of this weekend, and has been recently, that they're that fourth best team. Ferrari now is back up there fighting. So trying to battle for fifth place or whatever, getting fourth or fifth place is about as good as it's going to get. Keeping it clean. I mean, granted, George's wing, I'm trying to remember how his wing broke. I don't know if it was in the initial incident that the Albon Sonoda deal or what, but Mercedes is maximizing points for where they are. They know they're going to be fourth in the championship. Those two are battling for a place drivers wise, but it really doesn't matter for much of anything. So at least they kept it clean, didn't run over each other, and they get to be in basically one piece, going to a track which has been a good track for the Mercedes team, even in this era. A place where George Russell got his first career win a couple of years ago. So opportunity this coming weekend at Brazil, maybe, for them.
Very true. Of course, it's coming up to 2 years ago that Russell got his first win, and yes, it definitely places a whole sort of happy memories for him. I'll be honest, I thought the Merc battle was absolutely fantastic. They were very respectful in the way they were racing, and to see them sort of just sweeping back and forth, and Russell with some brilliant sort of defensive driving, but tidy defensive driving was really, really entertaining to see. But Phil, you mentioned that there was that Yuki Tsunoda incident in turn one, and Jared will come to that in a moment, because it really was not a 5-star drive from him. But if you like things that are 5 stars like this podcast, then be sure to leave us a 5-star review on Spotify or a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. Also, if you're not subscribed, please do subscribe to the YouTube channel. So now that 5-star segue's out of the way, let's have a look at Yuki's 1-star performance today. So running into turn one, Yuki was trying to go 3 wide with Albon and I believe Gasly. Yuki ran out of roads, and Yuki said, "Do you know what? I'm going to just send it anyway." Perez did it. I shouldn't have got him a contract extension, so that must get me the Red Bull seat. And then he basically yeeted it into turn one and killed, basically, because his rear wheel came flying off. It's a miracle that tyre didn't hit anyone, by the way. The way that I was bouncing across the track, I think, Phil, that's where Russell picked up the front wing damage, like he said. I've got a strong feeling it was. I'm not 100% on it, though. So, Jared, Yuki, bearing in mind that he's already seen one teammate replaced this season, and this time permanently, given that this is the Red Bull Junior team, Junior, for those of you who are listening on audio, I did some not so subtle air quotes there, including the tone of my voice, because Danny Rick was definitely a Red Bull Junior at the age of 34. It's it's not the wisest thing to do when your teammate is being widely tipped to take over the seat from Perez, who had another stinker today. And I'm not even going to talk about that because I'm bored already. Um, it wasn't a great move from Yuki, was it?
No, look, in his defense a little bit, just a little bit, there he didn't really have anywhere else to go but the grass on the outside there. But the fact that he ended up in that position rather than being a bit more conservative, say, going into turn one, middle of the pack, that there's always going to be drama. And the fact that they had to, repair his car the day before as well after he crashed at the end of Q2. Yeah, it's not a good look. And I think a couple of those Red Bull drivers, as you hinted at before this weekend, have had some pretty appalling showings. And Yuki Tsunoda definitely, if he was ever in contention for the Red Bull seat, which no one's ever popped his name in that hat for whatever reason. I think didn't do it any favors with riding off the car on the first lap. I think, innocent party to some degree, given that it is the first lap and we see these racing incidents all the time into turn one. Wasn't as, I guess, what do you call it, as obvious as Perez's one last year, for example, where he literally, thought he could take the lead and the win as well as he thinks that he will do so next year because he still firmly believes he's on the grid next year. Think of that what you will. But yeah, it ruined Albon's race as well, unfortunately, where he had another top 10 start and could have had some points coming their way. And their rivals in Alpine, did get a point courtesy of Gasly, who was on the kind of the inside of that incident as well and managed to survive. So yeah, not a good look for Yuki, I guess, in the context of what Red Bull are going to do next year with their second seat, if anything will happen, in fact, with that second seat. But yeah, for RB as well, losing what could have been some points on the table this weekend. They're fighting with Haas, of course, which I think we're talking about later as well. So yeah, it's a big loss with being out on the first lap.
Absolutely, it was a very, a very big loss for RB or VCARB or PayPal, Klarna, F1 Racing, whatever they're called this week. Sponsored by Stripe. But yes, Phil, yes, another collision or incident to talk about from today. This one was very much at the end of the race. It was in the sort of closing laps. It's between the two youngest, I believe, youngest drivers on the grid, Liam Lawson and Franco Colapinto. So they're both going into turn one. Lawson was defending; he was the car ahead. And Colapinto basically hung it all the way through turn one. Didn't quite get it right. Lawson obviously got his elbows out. Then ultimately, Colapinto ran over the front wing of Lawson. Lawson had to box, and the front wing sauce kind of ruined his race. I mean, I don't think he wasn't on for like a decent result, but he would have been on the fringes of the points. Since we've gone live, we found out that Colapinto's got I believe it was 2 points on his penalty license. He's basically been found at fault for the incident. How do you sort of view that scrap? Do you think it was sort of well, I don't want to say fair racing because the stewards decided it wasn't, but do you think there was a sort of element of sort of just banging wheels, I suppose, because Lawson was holding his line and Colapinto was holding his line. So, do you think that that's sort of just an unintended consequence of hard racing, or do you think the drivers should perhaps leave a bit more space?
I mean, you're battling for position, and when you're talking about Liam Lawson, we don't know what his actual situation is going to be next year. Franco Colapinto knows he's not going to be on the grid more than likely next year. So he knows this is 4 or 5 more races counting today until 2026 probably, unless he gets a reserve drive. And there was a lot of overtaking, um, some of it clean, some of it not, of course, today. But um, in terms of that, yeah, I mean, unintended consequence of close, hard racing there. But I mean, I think also Colapinto, um, it was a little bit over. He probably went a little bit over on his own end, maybe, and so I mean, it's a rookie error, I guess, and unfortunately for him, he gets a couple of points. His day essentially from there was kind of like nowhere, and then um, for Lawson losing out on a opportunity there for back end points. So it's just, I mean, these last two races have definitely brought up a lot of I guess, ghosts and demons of the past, but then also we're talking about how the respect that drivers have amongst each other or around one another. These are two guys that are probably going to be in this sport for a very long time. Getting into it, they'll both learn from it for sure, but they need to also understand that to win first you must finish, and they're not winning anything today, but there's a hope for both of them that they'll be in a winning position sooner rather than later. So I mean, unfortunate, considering the amount of passing incidents that seem to happen today. It gets more attention because it was late in the race and everything had spread out, but I think Colapinto will handle it a little differently next time, and so will Liam Lawson for that matter. Since whether it was Colapinto, whether it was Perez, whether it was I don't know who else, there was stuff going on for him and the Toro Rosso team the whole day.
Yeah, it wasn't the best day at the office for the entire Red Bull outfit. You know, the top team with both drivers having penalties and just not having a good day, and then the junior team, one of them, just flinging himself into turn one, and the other one getting his front wing run over. Probably not the best result they would want. And if it was, then perhaps aim a little bit higher. Jared, I do want to give a sort of shout out and sort of mention to them by extension, quick talk about Haas. Because we don't talk about them very much because they're Haas and they kind of just exist and they moan about Andretti joining the sport because apparently having 11 teams on the grid would be bad, even though they were an 11th team when they joined. But nobody likes to talk about that. But Haas got double points today. It was their best result of the season, I think. I'm fairly certain they doubled their points tally, which, bearing in mind, they were 2 or 3 points ahead of Alpine in that battle for 8th in the Constructors. They are now quite comfortably 8th in the Constructors. Given the last few years they were rooted to the bottom of the table, this is one heck of a turnaround.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm actually glad that you've passed it on to me to talk about Haas, so I can say that I've eaten a bit of humble pie about things I said earlier in the year in regards to change in management and the direction in which Gene Haas himself is taking the team, the fact that, he doesn't believe that further investment needs to be made, that they've kind of stretched their resources and kind of the question, the whole model that they're working with, which seems a bit, ornate, to say the least, in this day and age. But, I think having a change of leadership, Ayo Komatsu, different individual altogether than Gunther Steiner, and he's kind of more gently coaxed Haas into making some moves, and they've obviously got that technical partnership with Toyota as well, which is a massive, massive coup for them. And the fact that, even though they've got a completely different driver lineup coming in next year, we're still seeing some good results being brought out of Nico Hulkenberg and Kevin Magnussen, who Magnussen, pretty sure that he's in the twilight of his F1 career now, and these will be his last few races. So yeah, for them to pick up a double points finish, not have any incidents as well, which Magnussen's been a bit of a magnet for that as we've seen throughout the year, particularly when it comes to direct wheel-to-wheel racing and helping the team as it's such. But this time, the teammates sort of worked together to ensure that both of them finished in the top 10. So yeah, and like you said, they're up to 6 now in the Constructors' Championship, 10 points ahead of RB. And that's a whole lot more prize money that they've been getting in the last few years, that's for sure. When you look back to the Nadirs that they've had finishing last a couple of times now, finishing 0 points as well in 21 was at the dark days, really, when things were that desperate. They had to call upon certain drivers for their services and cash more so than the services, but we'll leave it at that. So yeah, good to see them kind of shut up with the complaining about other teams potentially coming in and actually letting their on-track performances do the talking.
Absolutely. And, like you said, with this technical partnership with Toyota, I mean, perhaps not quite the sort of full partnership with Toyota that some of us would like. Like I said last time out, I said I wouldn't mind seeing K-Max just two stepping in 2JZ around the circuit, but then we'll have to stick to a 1.6 turbo for now. That just about wraps up the show for now. So we're just going to run through the sort of last few bits of admin. So going to come to you both for your driver of the day. So this can't be a surprise to you anymore that we do this. So Phil, who is your driver of the day?
Smooth operator. Smooth operator.
Okay.
Ode to Connor Moore, because that's part of his impression of Carlos Sainz. It's for the driver of the 55 Ferrari, the winner today. Great weekend for him, and definitely did the smooth operation today for sure.
Well, I don't think we need to worry about being demonetized for your rendition there, Phil.
That's fine.
Cheers, mate. Jared, who's your driver of the day?
Oh, well, now that you say demonetization, it stops me from wanting to do a duet with Phil for Smooth Operator, because I'm going to say the same thing. Yeah, definitely great drive for him. And adding to what you guys were saying earlier about Sainz, it's almost bittersweet that he's going to be leaving Ferrari at the end of this year. And, if this does end up being his last win for the Scuderia and potentially his last win for a while in F1, it's quite sad, and he's really coming into this rich vein of form. But, I guess the motivation of winning a Constructors' Championship, which we can very much say that is a possibility now for them, being 20-odd points behind McLaren now. I think that's something that, Carlos, if they can achieve that, will look proudly back on, and the fact that he contributed solidly to that with his 2 wins so far this season. So yeah, for me, Carlos easily driver of the day with that smooth operation.
Absolutely. And it's a full house at the front from me. I'm also going to give it to Carlos Sainz. He starting from pole position is not easy around here, and he did lose out to Max on the run down to turn 1. However, he brilliantly took it back. Like I said earlier, that lunge was outrageous into turn 1, and he was then really clever to make sure he didn't cut the chicane too much. And yeah, even with Lando breathing down his neck, he still finished best part of 5 seconds up the road. Super drive. Yeah, really impressed with that. I think Sainz has always been an underrated driver, to be honest. But yeah, he is my driver of the day. Do you want to give a sort of quick sort of shout, well, not shout out, but a sort of special mention to who was I going to give it to? I can't even remember. It was that impressive. It's not Max Verstappen, don't worry, before anybody comes to me in the comments. I can't remember. I'm quite tired. I probably need to go to bed. Oh no, I was going to say Kevin Magnussen, size 7, finished 7th in a Haas. Fair play, lad. That's a really good result. And bearing in mind his teammate is Nico Hulkenberg, who is a pretty damn good driver. That is that is a pretty good result. So, chaps, just want to give you a quick chance to promo yourselves. So, Phil, I introduced you as everybody's spirit animal, but what I didn't say is that you are one of the hosts of the Grip Strip podcast. I'm sure most people know by now. Do you just want to give us a quick something about yourself?
Talking with the mute on. You'd think I'd know this after 200 something episodes on my end, but around 240 episodes of the Grip Strip podcast, we talk about all things motorsports, Formula One, of course, NASCAR, IndyCar, IMSA, World Endurance Championship, et cetera, et cetera. Basically, if it goes fast, we talk about it on the Grip Strip podcast. We also talk about American football and baseball, et cetera, on that end. And George was on the show co-hosting this past week. So thanks to him. And yeah, you can find us on Twitter at GripStripPod. You can find me, PG Matthew 28, and PGMGSP 28 on Instagram. And you can find the Grip Strip podcast on YouTube and on my personal page along with philipgmatthew.com. And of course, thanks to you, Tom, and great always to be on with you, Jawad, and to Aiden at whatever time of day it is for him, for all the work he does to get the Grid Talk out there for us each and every time.
Lovely. Thank you, Phil. And Jared, you are an F1 writer, big-time McLaren fan, and regular panelist when time zones suit, because obviously you are halfway around the world of Grid Talk. Just give us a bit about yourself.
Yeah, the writing, you can look on theraw.com.au. I do a bunch of articles for F1 and the V8 supercars and live blogs of all the F1 races as well. So, yeah, that's predominantly where I'm doing content these days. So, yeah, and just to Phil's point too, great to be on with both of you as well. And I feel like it's been an age since I've done a show with Phil because the time differences, of course, is quite tricky. And Aiden, good job as always. So thank you.
Lovely stuff. Thank you, mate. Yes, yeah, we're all in different time zones here, and yeah, it's 11:30 here in the UK. So I'm gonna get this out and then probably get myself to bed because I gotta drive to London tomorrow. So, with all that being said, I'd just like to thank you once again, chaps, for joining me. And as I'm sure everybody knows, Grid Talk is available on YouTube, where most episodes are recorded live. You can also catch everything on Amazon Fire, Spotify, Apple Music, Verbal, and Pocket Casts. Just search Formula One Grid Talk for a back catalogue of shows with previews and reactions to race results. A big thank you to Jared Bradley and Holly Eagle for supporting us on Patreon. If you do want to support the show further, why not sign up on our Patreon for exclusive content? Also, make sure you are subscribed so you're the first to know when each new episode is released. We'll be back soon later this week with previews to the next Grand Prix. With all that being said, thank you very much for listening to the Grid Talk podcast presented by Bet Online, and goodbye.